AI is important. There's no doubt about that. Economically, strategically, national interest. Yeah, it's a big thing from a policy perspective and a big picture perspective. And there's a lot of people who want to talk about it. And you know who they are? They're who I like to call the TED Talk crowd. The keynote speakers, the quote unquote public intellectuals, whatever the hell that is, authors, futurists, whatever the hell that is. Yeah, they love giving talks on it, whether or not they actually know it. And you know, a lot of people would say, well, they're not talking about the technology, they're talking about society and the greater effects and everything like that. But they've actually been doing a terrible job. People who know nothing about AI and have appointed themselves AI experts are out there just spreading nothing but nonsense. They really are. And one of the worst ones is this guy. Yuval Noah Harari. He look at this. There are dozens of lectures he's given on AI. He is $150,000 for a speaking fee. And he speaks at big places. Davos, the World Economic Forum. You see here, yep, World Economic Forum, Wall Street Journal, The Economist, right? All of these, Bloomberg, these big, important, scholarly, financial things, universities and conferences. And yeah, the thing is, he's well known as a quote unquote intellectual. He's the author of Sapiens, a well known book that sold 40 million copies internationally, which, yeah, that's a lot to sell, yeah, legitimately. But he's not an AI expert at all. Does he know what he's talking about with AI? Well, I guess he might, right? He is billed as an expert. Maybe he read up on it. Maybe he actually followed it. Maybe he's just sticking to that stuff that he knew. Well, let's find out, because I actually put together some clips from, actually I grabbed them right from these YouTube videos right here. Let's take a listen to what he has to say. Give it a sec.
So you are a military, you studied the military history of the Middle East. Did you ever expect to now be the foremost expert on all things AI and whether we are doomed?
He's not, but okay.
I'm not the foremost expert, but I didn't expect to be talking about AI with such an audience. As you said, I was originally a specialist in medieval military history.
As I said, he's a well-known author.
But are coming back in many ways.
Okay.
And you know, a lot of people consider his books very highly. He also has a newer book about AI called Nexus.
I ask you this first question. You call artificial intelligence, or alien intelligence as you refer to it throughout your writing, the rise of a new species that could replace Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
Sapiens, your prior book. What does it mean to be human right now?
This is not correct, and I'll explain in a second.
That for the first time, we have real competition on the planet.
There are some real problems here.
That we have been the most intelligent species by far for tens of thousands of years.
This is actually kind of ridiculous.
From being an insignificant ape in a corner of Africa to being the absolute rulers of the planet and of the ecosystem. And now we are creating something that could compete with us in the very...
Okay, so the problem here is he's making a massive category error to make it seem more compelling. AI models are not beings. They do not self-direct. They don't have agency. They're not motivated to do things on their own. They don't have a survival mechanism. They're software. So to say it competes with humans, just no, not at all. That's not accurate. I mean, there's already automated systems that do all kinds of things, and you know, AI does operate within human institutions and direction.
Very near future. The most important thing to know about AI is that it is not a tool like all previous
This
human
is also
inventions.
not true.
It is an agent.
It's not.
An agent in the sense that it can make decisions independently of us. It can invent new ideas.
This is not how people in the sector...
change by itself. All previous human inventions, you know, whether a printing press or the atom bomb, they are tools.
AI is not the same as automation. AI systems don't necessarily operate on their own. And automation already existed before AI. There were complex systems that could do all kinds of things on their own. Autopilots and railroads that had complex interlocking system. Yeah, these have always existed. So it's really like reframing it in a way that makes it sound profound, but it really isn't.
That empower us.
They needed us.
They need us because a printing press cannot
They
write
need
books
us. See, they're
by
not
itself,
beings.
and it cannot decide which books to print.
See,
An atom bomb cannot invent the next more powerful
yeah,
bomb.
AI
and
really
an
doesn't
atom bomb cannot
self-direct.
decide what to attack. An AI weapon
There
can
are
decide by
autonomous
itself
weapons already.
which target to attack and design the next generation of weapons by itself.
Okay, so that didn't really make a lot of sense, but you might say, well, he's being hyper metaphoric there. Okay. The thing is, I don't think any of that is useful. I consider that kind of like a
And
sense.
therefore, your argument is that we, especially the powerful leaders in this room, have a lot of responsibility.
Oh, this one's
because
good.
how we act is how AI will be. You cannot expect to lie.
This
and cheat and have
sounds
benevolence.
wise and
Yeah.
deep
It's
and
not.
everything.
Yeah,
But
there is a
it's
big
not.
discussion around the
Completely
world
wrong.
about AI alignment. Okay, we are creating these increasingly super intelligent, very powerful new agents. How do we make sure that these agents remain aligned with human goals and with the benefit of humanity, that they do what is good for us? And so there is a lot of research and a lot of efforts focused on the idea that if we can design these AIs in a certain way, if we can teach them.
Okay, there's a couple of errors here, and you're going to notice an error that is carried on through his entire lecture, and that is that people who really have trouble, like having any kind of mental model for something that responds mechanically, the only thing that they can think of is that it must be a mind, and so he keeps gravitating back to the idea that, well, it either has agency or it does, but it's suppressed, doesn't. Or it has desires and they're going to come out eventually, or it hasn't reached that point. But you're going to notice this is very consistent. He cannot get away from the idea that it is some sort of being.
Certain principles, if we can code into them certain goals,
Which is
then
like a very
we will be safe.
unsophisticated.
But there are two main problems
Like
with this
view,
approach. First of all, again, the very definition of AI is that it can learn and change by itself. If you have a machine
That
can
is so
act
wrong.
automatically, but only following pre-programmed orders,
This could not
then,
be more
you know,
wrong.
It's a coffee machine.
This is
It
completely
can do
wrong.
something automatically, produce coffee.
Like this is
but
laughably
it cannot
wrong.
decide or invent anything by itself. It's not an AI. So
That's
when
not
you
what-
design
doesn't know
an
the
AI,
definition.
by definition, this thing is going to do all
That is
kinds
not the
of
definition.
things which you cannot anticipate.
Although
if you can
AI has
anticipate
kind of fuzzy
everything
definition.
it will do, it is by definition not an AI.
Spoken
So
with the
that's one
confidence of a
problem.
full
The
ignoramus.
other even bigger problem, that we can think about AI, like you said, like a baby or a child. And you can educate a child to the best of your ability.
He doesn't
and
know how this
he
works.
or she will still surprise you.
He
for
does not
better
know
or
how it
worse.
works.
No matter how much you invest in their education, they are.
So he's going to explain that if you're being bad in the world and you tell AI be good and it sees you being bad, it'll be bad. Because like a child goes to school and they say, teach them that, but then they see their parents doing something else and they don't. The problem is that's not how AI works. It doesn't like go to school and get lessons. When we say we're training AI, see, he doesn't realize this. AI does not learn at inference through observations. AI, which is machine learning models, they're pre-trained ahead of time during training with organized training data. AI does not generally learn in any way by observation. Now, there are like reinforcement learning mechanisms that allow you to do that. But in general, no. That is not how it learns. It does not observe and learn. It punches through a lot of examples until it builds up the statistics on it. Yeah, that's not correct. That is just not how it works. He just doesn't realize that. And you hear
agents,
machine
they
learning
might
and training and you
eventually
think,
do
well, it must be something like
which will
that.
surprise you and even horrify you.
But no.
The other thing is, everybody who has any knowledge of education knows.
See, he thinks
that
it's an education issue.
in the
It's not.
education
That's
of
not how
children,
machine
it
training
matters
works.
far less
It's not how machine learning
what you
works.
tell them.
And what you do.
It matters far more
Doesn't
what
see
you do.
what you do.
If you tell your kids, Don't lie. And
He
your
just
kids
doesn't
watch you
understand that
lying
machine
to other
learning
people,
is
they
different
will
than
copy
that.
your behavior, not your
And then
instructions.
and then
now, if
the
we
model
have
is
now
frozen.
This big project
Completely
to
wrong.
educate
Completely wrong.
the AIs, not to lie.
Educate the AIs.
But the AIs are given access to the world, and they watch how humans behave, and they see some of the most powerful humans on the planet, including their parents, lying.
Their parents.
The AI will copy the behavior.
No, because the thing is,
People will
AI.
think that I can run
AI.
say, these huge
There
AI
are like narrow training examples, and then there's. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. It's a more engineered process with like results that are quantifiable. Like you train it with certain data, you test it. There's something called RLHF.
to keep in mind,
it's not like that.
We now have this immigration crisis.
Oh, this is good. See, he just cannot let go of the idea that that an AI model is a being. Completely wrong.
There are three main things
wrong.
that come
and
to
actually
people's
like very unsophisticated
our
to not be able to
jobs.
break through this mindset.
They come with different cultural ideas.
They immigrate with different cultural ideas.
They may have political agendas. They might try to take over the country politically.
Your chat
These
GPT
are the three
session.
main things that people keep coming back to. Now, you can think about
people
the
listen to this guy and think he's smart.
A wave of immigration.
People listen to this guy and think he's smart.
Billions of AI immigrants that will take people's jobs.
Millions and billions of AI immigrants.
Very different cultural ideas.
Different culture.
And that might try to gain some kind of political power.
They're gonna try to gain political
power.
These
AI immigrants, these digital immigrants, they don't need visas. They don't cross.
So that's it. You turn on an AI algorithm, it's like an immigrant.
They come at the speed of light. And
profound
I look, for
word
instance,
salad.
At far-right parties.
Yeah, all right. Let's see what the next clip is, because I cut these up because eventually
these new intelligent alien agents here on Earth. Then yes, I think that there are ways we can contain them. But if the humans are divided among themselves,
he cannot get past the idea that it's a being.
In an arms race,
he just cannot get.
It becomes almost impossible.
He can't wrap his mind around it not having like agency, drive, and direction.
There is, I'm tending to think of it more in terms of really an alien invasion.
It's not.
That like somebody coming and telling us that,
that's Mustafa Suleiman. He knows it.
Fleet
that's an actual
spaceships
expert.
Coming from planet Zircon,
actual expert
with highly intelligent beings. They'll be here
Watch
in
what
5
happens.
years and take over the planet.
That guy
Maybe
knows.
they'll be nice. Maybe they'll solve cancer and climate change, but we are not sure. This is what we are facing, except that the aliens are not coming in spaceships from planet Zircon, they're coming from the laboratory.
He's sitting right next to you, the creator.
I honestly think it's an unhelpful characterization of the nature of the technology. An alien
the
has by
adult
default
in the room.
agency. These are going to
The
be
adult
tools
in the room.
that we can apply
They
in
watch what
narrow
happens.
settings.
Yes, but let's say they potentially have agency.
No, they don't.
We can try to prevent them from having agency.
It's
but
not like
we
that.
know that they are going to be highly intelligent and at least potentially have agency.
No, because AI models are feed-forward functions that are static until you feed something into them. You say, here's an input, what's the pattern that comes out? It has no autonomy in and of itself. So, for it to do that, you'd have to completely redirect it. Now, there are agent frameworks, but that's different. That's more like prompting it automatically. It's not going to it's not going to go from like a static model to something that does things on its own. That's not possible. You'd have to redesign the entire thing. And see, like, Mustafa Suleiman, he knows that because he actually does that for a living. He's actually with he knows what he's talking about. Let's see what comes up.
Maybe the most important thing we need is to build trust.
Okay.
And this is different levels, philosophical, practical. One of the reasons that the order of the world is collapsing is that we have a deficit of trust in the world. And it makes us extremely vulnerable to AI. And it also, I think, guarantees a very dangerous kind of AI that will try and probably
Will
succeed
try.
in taking the world
It
from
will
us.
try because that's
Why?
the
Because you can think about AIs as like, the children of humanity. When you try to educate children, there are the things you say to them, and there are the things they observe you actually do. And your behavior has far more influence on.
All right. So the way that an AI model is trained is that basically there are a series of training. There's like with a large language model, pre-training and then fine-tuning and then goes through a process. And with each step, it has to be like reevaluated to make sure that the training worked, that it does what you want, and you test it, reevaluate it, do some more fine-tuning, polish it up. It's an iterative process. And when you have the model working the way you want it to, that's when you stop training and it stops learning anything new. And then if you wanted to modify the model to retrain it, then it has to be specifically taken back into the retraining mode. But it does not do that on its own in inference. So that's where he just does not understand the basics of it. And the thing is that there are problems with that. Like there's something called the lifelong learning problem, which is that in AI models, when you keep trying to put new information into them with retraining, you end up with something called catastrophic forgetting. And then there's behavioral drift. And these are issues that happen because it overwrites parts of the model. But so that's why, this is far more technically sophisticated than anybody in this video would understand. But it's not possible to have a model that just observes the world and learns continuously. We don't know how to do that. And honestly, I'm not sure we would want that anyway, because most models are task-directed, and you really wouldn't want it to pick up new and uncontrolled behavior once you have it down.
On their education than what you tell them to do. So if we kind of tell our AIs...
But I totally get that this sounds very reasonable.
Don't be untrustworthy.
I mean, it even
cheat.
sounds like
Don't
wise
lie.
and profound,
Don't
right?
manipulate. And then the AI observes us constantly manipulating and cheating and grabbing power. The AI will learn from how we behave. So an AI which is trained, I mean, even if the AI kind of tycoon tells the engineers, find some way to engineer into the AI something that will make it trustworthy.
That's not how it works either. You don't like redesign the features of it to try to make it trustworthy. You train it to try. Basically, you make sure that the data you put into it doesn't cause bad data to come out of it, right? You don't want to train it to say like offensive or harmful things, so you don't let that in the training data, and you test it extensively. But the model itself cannot learn morality. It's not a moral agent or being. All you can do is train it not to have outputs that are harmful. But see, again, he just cannot get away. He's really stuck on the idea that it is something like a mind.
If the AI tycoon himself, or in rare cases herself, behaves in an untrustworthy way, and if he himself believes that all the world is just a power struggle, there is no way that he can produce a trustworthy AI. No way.
That's not how it works. No, the
is like the womb.
Yeah.
It has a lot of influence, but a big part of education also happens after the child leaves the womb.
Yes.
And one thing you cannot do in a laboratory
he does not
is to
understand
history.
that when a model is past training,
so I read about
it's
all these
frozen.
Kinds of
That's it.
simulations that they try to see how would the AI react in this situation, how would the AI react in that situation.
It doesn't learn anything after that because that would modify it.
Dangerous potential, and sometimes they discover quite scary things.
And this is fundamentally completely wrong in understanding the process.
To witness the scariest things in the lab, because this
is also not true.
What happens when billions of people in the real world interact with billions of AI agents? Things will emerge from that interaction that cannot be simulated.
No,
in the lab.
It's benchmarked in red team before
scenarios. And again, you can try to
You're going to notice everybody treats him like he's really smart. None of these people know enough.
All kinds of mechanisms that will make it align.
Poor Mustafa, he was the only guy who had to deal with this, who could see the nonsense.
Or to manipulate. But once that AI is, I mean, for me, this goes back maybe to the definition of AI, which this is the part we skipped. What is AI? But for me, a key part of the definition of AI is the ability to learn and change by itself.
No.
If a machine
Machine
is
learning is
incapable of learning and changing
not like
by
that.
itself, it's not an AI.
Yes.
It could be an automatic
And
machine
that's
of all
not even the
kinds
definition of
it's
AI.
not an AI. So
Although the
by
definition's fuzzy.
definition, no matter how you design the AI in the lab, once it's in the real world outside, it could learn and change by itself.
No, it can't.
And it will learn, at least in the beginning, from human behavior. So if you have a society dominated by Elon Musk and Donald Trump,
I mean, the only place this is kind of true is that, like, if that ended up in the training corpus, like if it was being trained on just a pile of text that included recent news, okay, that's kind of, but even that, not really that wouldn't really affect the behavior of the model. So he doesn't really understand how the training pipeline works, which is fundamental. I mean, these are not just like metaphoric, like high level like stuff. He's getting it completely wrong.
will learn from Elon Musk and Donald Trump and will behave in maybe not identical ways, but in ways so who are the parental figures that humanity
The
wants
parental
for
figures.
AI? Now, I know that a lot of the support
All right, so let's see what the next clip is.
There is a very big question which we didn't deal with, and it's a long question of whether AIs will develop emotions, feelings of their
No.
own, whether they become
No.
conscious or
No,
not.
they won't.
At present, we don't see any sign of it. But even if AI
So he's back to the fact that he just can't seem to like deal with the idea that it isn't something like a mind. AI models are statistical engines. They reproduce patterns. And there's no place for emotions to arise there. It wouldn't even make sense. It can recreate the patterns of emotion, yes, but it's not a persistent thing that's there thinking and feeling and stuff. Emotions are biochemical, right? They're based on like everything from like neurons getting fatigued and dopamine and serotonin and you know, you're hungry, and so it's a combination system. Could this exist in silicon and software? Well, maybe, but you'd have to have functions that did the same thing. You'd have to have some sort of persistent internal state that would, and it doesn't. So it's not going to just develop that because it doesn't have the ability to model things like emotions, and you'd have to try to design that into it. It couldn't just arise.
don't develop any feelings of their own, once we become emotionally attached to them, it is likely that we would start treating them as conscious
some people.
entities, as sentient beings, and will confer on them the legal status of persons. You know, in the US, there is
Oh, God, here
actually
it
a
comes.
legal path already
This is
open.
even more wrong. He
for
should know
that.
better than this.
Corporations,
No!
according to US law, are legal
No,
persons.
no, no,
They have
no,
rights.
no.
They have freedom of speech, for
No!
instance. Now, you can incorporate
No,
an
you
AI.
can't.
When you incorporate
No!
a corporation like Google
No,
or Facebook
no,
or whatever,
no.
Until today, this was to some extent just
He's
make-believe.
trying very hard
Because
to make
all
the
the
AI
decisions
some
of the
sort
corporations
being.
had to be made by human beings, by
Yeah,
the
see, that-
executives, the lawyers, the accountants. What happens if you incorporate an AI? It's now a legal person, and it
No,
can
it's
make
not.
decisions by
No.
itself. It doesn't need
No.
any human team to run
No.
it. So you start having
All right, the reason he's completely wrong is you can't just have an object self-incorporate. Incorporation requires an incorporator. There has to be an owner. There has to be corporate officers, boards of directors, investors. So when you say corporations are people, you're not entirely wrong. They're groups of people. And so there's ownership and accountability here. Now he's going to go on to say, well, what if an AI system could go out there and just do its own thing and make money? That's already possible. There are like vending machines and stuff that could just be sitting there owned by nobody taking in money, right? But we don't give vending machines rights. And in fact, the vending machine can't really own itself. It can't own the money it makes. So
legal
you could
persons,
have,
let's say in the US, which are not human, and in many ways are more intelligent than us, and they can start making money For instance, going on TaskRabbit and offering their
that
services
doesn't
to
make
various
sense.
things like writing texts. So they
Like already you could have like a Bitcoin mining cluster that was just sitting there on its own making money through Bitcoin mining. But it doesn't really work that way because somebody has to own it and direct it and stuff. Otherwise, well, if nobody owns it, I'll just take it for myself and no one will object to it, right? I mean, he doesn't really
earn
get
money.
the problem.
And then they go to the market. They go to Wall Street and they invest that money. And because they're so intelligent, maybe they make billions. And so you have a situation
universal
in which
broad
perhaps
intelligence is another thing
the
you say.
richest person
People
in
assume
the
it will be
US
intelligent in
is
everything.
not a human being.
Well, that's profound. Not a human being.
I mean, you're an expert in this field.
He's not.
How worried should we be about artificial intelligence
How worried
actually
should we be?
taking control?
We should be very worried.
The
Because
arrogance.
what we need to understand about
The
AI,
arrogance
artificial intelligence,
of this
it
ignoramus.
is the first tool that can make
Oh, here it
decisions
comes.
by itself. All
Same
previous
thing.
inventions in human history always empowered us. They always gave us more power because
This
the
is a
decisions
huge
were
problem
always
that
made by
people
humans.
listen to somebody
If you
like this and
invent a
literally
knife,
think he's an
the
expert.
knife cannot decide whether to use it to cut salad
How would
or
anybody
to murder
know?
somebody or to save their life in surgery. If
He
you
doesn't
invent
seem
an
to think
atom
there's a
bomb,
problem.
Similarly, the atom bomb cannot decide who to attack
No.
and when and where. AI is the first technology
No, there are
that can
already
actually
autonomous
make decisions by
systems.
itself. It can make decisions about its own usage
Not
and
really.
development. Nukes cannot make better nukes, but AI can make better AI. And also, AI can make and does make decisions about us. Increasingly, when you apply to a bank to get a loan, you apply to get a job, it's an AI making crucial decisions about your
Banks,
life. And we
insurance,
haven't seen
flight
anything
rates,
yet.
these have been
AI
automated
is
for
just making
decades,
its
right?
first
It's not like it's
tiny
something
baby
new.
steps.
Yeah.
It's something like 10 years old. You know, to really think about it as like this is the beginning of organic life. 4 billion
He's
years ago,
completely
this is the
wrong
first
about
amoeba
like complete
crawling
category
out
error.
of the organic
Complete
soup.
category
Can
error.
you imagine how Tyrannosaurus Rex would look like, or how Homo sapiens
Profound word
would
salad.
look like, and what we'll be able to
Okay,
do?
well, you
So
successfully,
this is
you
the moment for
successfully,
AI.
yeah, look, you successfully terrified me and probably all my viewers. So
Now wait a second. Listen to what he said there. Does that bother anybody that somebody who doesn't actually know what they're talking about is out there saying frightening things that upset people? Like, that bothers me. Could cause bad public policy. All right, well, I guess he's fine with it. Dunning-Kruger. People think he's smart.
One of the other key things about AI, because it can learn and change by itself, so whatever we teach it,
Oh,
we
this
cannot
again.
be certain that it
No,
will
no,
always
no. Once you
just
train it,
comply
it's static
by
at
our
inference.
instructions. Again, if it only does what we tell it to do, it's not really an AI.
That's not actually
so
an
when we
accurate.
think about the alignment problem, or
The
how
alignment
to
problem
educate
is
AI
not really a thing.
to be
You don't
benevolent and not harmful, it's a very problematic and imperfect analogy. But
Listen
I think
to
it's
him
still
talk
useful
about this like
to
he
think about
understands
AI as a child, as the child of humanity. And what we know about educating children is that they never do what you tell them to do. They do what they see
Yeah,
you
you know
do.
what? Let me. This is.
And then the child observes you lying and cheating other people behavior, not following. Now, if you have, kind of people in the revolution,
Yeah.
don't lie, he observes them to the world and sees them.
Let's see if he's still talking about
And
it.
he do the same, and not harmful.
Oh god, I reversed it by mistake. Oops. Crap. How do I change the speed? Oh crap. Oops. Crap. I feel stupid now. VLC player. Oh, that's back. I don't want back. I want slower.
And so, what's change? Perhaps the richest person.
God dang it. All right, what's the speed? Video. Playback. Speed. Normal. All right. Sorry about that. Let's see, is this the right place?
Now, if we have, you know, the kind of people who are leading the AI revolution, telling the AI, don't lie. Of example is
All
a
right,
thought
let me just
experiment
fast forward through
invented by
that and go back to.
They do humans who trust each other, but it is developed through humans that makes billions of dollars. Realistic example
he's
is
just
a
saying
thought
what he-
experiment invented by the philosopher Nick Bostrom in 2014.
Oh, the
Sounds
paperclip
crazy,
experiment.
but you know, bear with it. He imagines a super intelligent AI.
It's not a very-
computer, which is
Not a very
bought
interesting
by
thought
a
experiment.
paperclip factory, and the paperclip manager tells the AI, "Your goal,
Right,
reason
it's a
I bought
super
you,
intelligent,
your
godlike
goal,
AI,
your
and it's told to
entire
make paper
existence,
clips, right?
You're here to
Oh, that's
produce
profound.
as many paperclips as possible. That's your goal."
Profound.
And then the AI conquers the entire world, kills all of the humans,
Yeah.
and turns the entire
Oh, that's very
planet
realistic.
into factories for producing paperclips.
I'm sure that will
Humans
happen.
are extremely adaptable animals, but we need time to adapt. And that's the main requirement from how to deal effectively, positively with the AI revolution. Give us time. And when you talk with the people
So,
leading the revolution, most of
This
them,
is something you may have heard
maybe
that, like,
after an hour or two of
we
discussion,
want to
they
pause
generally
or
say,
slow
"Yes,
down.
it
No,
would be a
but
good
no.
idea to slow down and to give humans a bit more time, but we cannot slow down because we are the good guys and we want to slow down, but our competitors
So he's
will not slow
he's
down.
he's
Our competitors
miscategorizing. He's
either
mischaracterizing
here
what
in
it
another
what
corporation
it's
or
like
across
in
the
AI.
ocean, in
He's
another nation.
basically saying this thing
And
that
you
I've heard
talk to the
repeated, that
competitors, they say the same thing. We would like to slow down.
we should slow down. It's moving too fast. Maybe we won't know how to accommodate, but God, we can't, or the Chinese or somebody will exceed us. I've heard this, and it's not actually true. No one in like a frontier lab feels like we have to or someone will beat us, but it's dangerous. He's saying this, and people actually think this, but it's not true or anything. It's no technology do you ever want to slow the development of.
And I think the key paradox of the whole AI revolution.
I'm sure he's never
is
talked to
that
anybody
you
there.
have people saying we cannot trust the humans, but then they say, but we think we would be able to trust the AIs. Because when you
But
raise
machines
then
are
the
different
issue
than people,
of
right?
How can we trust these new
You trust a
intelligences
person to be
that we are
honest. You trust a
creating?
machine
They
not
say,
to be
"Oh,
broken.
we think we can figure that out."
Like it's a malfunction if the machine doesn't work. So it's a different type of trust, actually. But I don't know where he got that.
Consciousness is the capacity to feel things like pain and pleasure and love and hate. And in humans and other mammals, consciousness and intelligence go together.
So again, like a lot of people who don't understand information theory and the mathematics of it just cannot wrap their mind around the idea
So we tend to confuse
that there
two.
isn't something
But in
mind-like going
computers,
on.
at least until
And that's why
today,
the emotions
we
come in.
saw a very rapid, really amazing development of intelligence and no development of consciousness. At the present moment, there are more and more people who start claiming that actually AIs
See,
do
and that's why. See,
consciousness.
you got to
And
notice
we
he
know
thinks like, well, if it's intelligent,
to know whether
maybe it'll
this is
become
true or not.
conscious and have feelings and
But just
stuff.
when talking
But it's
about
not because it worked.
different
It's an entirely
possibilities,
different ontology.
there is a
It's
scenario
not a mind.
that we don't know how consciousness arises in organic beings, in humans and or dogs or chimpanzees.
And I mean, whether or not we do, we do know that consciousness has to have like a continuous self-awareness, right?
So it cannot exist on a silicon basis. And then AIs will never have consciousness. Maybe not. Maybe it is possible to create consciousness, for consciousness to emerge on very different types of systems, and AIs will develop consciousness, maybe of a very different kind than us. Again, these are open questions.
It
They are
wouldn't
just the
develop because
very,
you'd
very
have to.
first stages of the AI revolution, and these are going to
I
be
mean, it's a
some of the
weird
most
question why you would even
questions
want
we
that,
face in coming years.
but it couldn't spontaneously arise. No, because Because of the
Theory,
nature
yes,
of the models.
Because it's still AI has still not escaped our control.
Has not
We are
yet
making the
escaped.
decisions how to develop it, and we can make decisions, for instance, to invest a much larger percentage of the money and the human talent in safety. You have a budget for the development.
Again,
of the
he's
next
completely
AI generation.
miscategorizing
What
how AI has
percentage of
developed.
this
It's
budget
not that we don't
goes
spend.
to safety. It's like, when you develop a car,
So-
you develop medicine, it's always a question.
The
of how much you
reliability of
develop
AI
in
models is
safety.
actually very
At
important in the
present,
development.
Very little goes to safety.
And so it's part of the.
Because of this arms
That's-
race mentality that everybody is afraid, if we slow down.
Can you
invest
imagine if
more
you're
in
working in a
safety,
lab and you
our
have this
competitors
idiot out there,
don't,
like,
they
getting
will
so much
win
press,
the
completely
AI
telling people
race,
everything
and
you
they
do
will
is.
dominate the world.
No.
And everybody is saying that.
No
And
one's
with
saying
the new
that.
US administration, I think there is very little chance that we will see any kind of global agreement on AI or any meaningful regulation. So in this sense, this is, I'm afraid, very bad news for humanity.
Oh,
Because
come
if it
on.
is a kind of out of control AI race, we know who will win and who will lose. AI will win and humanity will lose because it will escape our control.
I think that's it. Oh, no, wait, there's another.
Ask just one more question.
Oh, here it
about
is.
the
This is the last
apocalypse,
one.
and then we're going to go to audience questions. So I was reading your book.
So this
on
is
the
his
subway.
book.
I was
People
wrapping
read
up
it.
before dinner the other night with my son, and this was my favorite paragraph. I'm just going to read it to you, and I want you to explain what it means. We have now created a non-conscious, but very powerful alien intelligence. Agreed. If we mishandle it, AI might extinguish not only the human dominion
Oh,
on Earth,
God. He's a
but the
doomer
light
on top of that.
consciousness itself, turning the universe into a realm of utter darkness.
Frightening.
Cheerful book here,
Scary.
This is the end. It is our responsibility to prevent this. So one way to prevent it would be to prevent AI from extinguishing us.
That's
Another
not.
would be to try to create consciousness and send it out into the universe. Explain to me, the question that this paragraph raises is, what is the thing that humans could do that would allow consciousness to exist even if we extinguish ourselves?
Yeah, as I said, it's kind
I'm
of
not sure what it is. I mean, the
kind
problem
of
is we
difficult to
don't-
even imagine how
we
you could
still
do it
don't
in
understand
software.
consciousness. We don't know how it emerges in us. We don't know how it evolved. That's why we also, with regard to AI, this big question of AI consciousness.
You couldn't have
tend to be
exactly the
agnostic
same thing in
about it.
software. The question is, could you have
I
like
don't think that
analogous
AIs will
functions
necessarily
to
develop
self-monitoring and
consciousness,
continuous awareness?
But I'm not sure
Those kind of
that
things.
they will never develop consciousness. Could be. So again, this scenario.
As I said, it can't like
that
just spontaneously
AIs,
arise.
destroy human civilization, take over.
Although
and then
honestly,
spread
I don't know that it
from
makes
Earth
sense really to think of
the
software as
rest of the
conscious,
galaxy
but
and to
who
other
knows?
galaxies. But in the
We're nowhere
process,
near
they
there.
never develop consciousness.
And it's
This
not
is
like a
the
natural
dark
consequence
universe
of machine
scenario.
learning.
That again, there is a huge confusion about these two terms because in humans they go together. Intelligence is
Yeah.
the ability to attain goals
And that's the
and
problem.
solve problem on the way to that goal. Consciousness is the ability to feel things like pain and pleasure and love and hate. Humans solve problems relying on our feelings. In us and in other mammals and animals, consciousness and intelligence go together. This is why we confuse them. Now, in computers, so far, we've only seen an advance.
This
huge
man
advance in
charges
intelligence
$150,000 for
without
every
any
speaking
advance in consciousness,
engagement.
as far as we can tell.
Spoke at
In
the
some
World
fields,
Economic
narrow
Forum.
fields, AI is already
Probably
far
got
more
probably got even
intelligent than us,
more than
and
that
still
for
it has
that.
no consciousness.
Enough to
When
buy a
it
small
wins the
house.
game of chess, it's not happy. When it loses,
And
it's
no,
not
it- his
sad. It doesn't feel
World
anything.
Economic Forum
Now,
speech was no
in
better.
many scenarios,
People
AI
actually,
becomes
so
more
like
and
people
more
who just have never
intelligent,
heard
at some
anybody, and
point,
he's the
it
only
also gains consciousness.
quote unquote expert they know of.
There is no reason to think that this is inevitable.
But
There
the
could
problem
be
is like
different
these are complete
roads
category errors
leading
that
to
steer you in the wrong
superintelligence.
direction.
Mammals and humans have been traveling along one road
Oh God, is
for
this almost
millions
over?
and millions of years, a road which involves the development of consciousness. computers, AIs, might simply be traveling along a different road, a much faster road, which reaches superintelligence without passing through any phase of developing consciousness. And if this happens, and if it gets out of our control, this could spell, again, not just the end of the human dominion on Earth, but the end of the light of consciousness itself. You can have a galactic empire without any feeling, and nothing feels anything. It's just all dark.
But why?
Okay, so, God, that was like painful to watch. But as I said, this guy is like held up as like somebody who you should listen to and gives all kinds of big keynote speeches. My God, the one time he was there with somebody who knew. Yeah, and you see the problem. There's some really basic ones. In fact, one is like incredibly unsophisticated and basic, and that is that he does not have a mental model for what could output like, intelligent like things and not be a thinking, feeling self. So he keeps coming back to that. He insists, but it will have agency because it will be really smart. But you see, that's because his model of intelligence is what most people think of, which is like human intelligence or even animal intelligence, cognition, right? Self-direction. But artificial intelligence isn't intelligence in that sense. It's something different. It's the ability to recreate a pattern with constraints. And it's entirely mathematical. Beyond that, there are some other major errors in here. Not understanding the training pipeline or the risk management or the potential. This is really not good. This makes understanding and literacy way worse. Policymakers listen to this. The news media does. And therefore, you end up with a situation where the general public, the politicians, they all think something that isn't even true. Because only a minority of people are able to resist this, because only a minority of people know it well enough. But that's why I'm trying to get this information out there. Because everything that he says about AI is absolute nonsense. I mean, he's lucky if he says one thing that's correct, but then again, a stop clock is right twice a day. Yeah, and you hear people say that he's an expert because they think highly of him because he wrote a really popular book. Well, all right, but he's not right when it comes to AI. And there are a lot of people like this who are making a lot of money and building their careers by just bloviating this nonsense.